The Australian Ghost Whisperer with Caterina Legato and James Jennings. Hey Caterina, how are you doing?
Hi, James. I'm doing well. How are you going?
All right, not too bad, not too
That
bad. Uh,
that's great.
and I know that you've had a pretty interesting week and you've done some really interesting readings. We've been speaking about it outside of the podcast, but when I heard some of your stories, I was like, you know what? I think this would make a pretty cool podcast. People might want to hear about some of the interesting work that you're doing on just, a daily basis.
Hmm.
So
Yes,
yeah.
I'd love to. I did a reading last week, which I was quite fascinating. A young girl, she was probably in her mid-20s. She came to see me, and her great grandmother came through in the reading. And although my client had never met her great grandmother, she had photos and kind of knew quite a bit about her. Anyway, great grandma comes through and she says to me, "Now you tell my granddaughter that she must go to her grandmother, which is the great grandmother's mother,
Mhm.
demand that she give her the pearls that I left for her." So apparently, what had happened is great grandmother had left pearls
Mm.
for this particular great grandchild,
Right.
and the grandmother had held on to them and had not given them to her. So she was really, really adamant that I pass on this message, and she really wanted her to have these pearls. It was really important for her because they obviously had this really beautiful connection, even though they'd not physically met. She felt very connected to this great granddaughter. Anyway, so I delivered the message to my client, and she was completely unaware that such pearls had existed or that something like that had been left to her.
Mm.
So anyway, so continued on with the reading and finished that off. And then the next day she went to her grandmother and she said to her grandmother, "Look, I've had a reading, and there's a set of pearls that great grandma intended for me." So grandmother obviously had a shock because she knew she had not given the pearls as she was meant to,
Mm.
and handed them over to her. And they were beautiful. She sent me a photo of the pearls, and they were this beautiful antique color. They were gorgeous pearls. And I just felt like when I looked at the photo of pearls, I could feel great grandmother say, smiling, going, "Ha, the job was well done." So I think it's very symbolic of how sometimes people on the other side will go to um, all kinds of, oh, sorry, I've blanked out, all kinds of,
Lengths?
go to any kind of extreme
Mm.
to to have their desires met, because obviously when people put a lot of thought into what they want to leave behind, whether it's a particular jewelry, or it could be furniture, it could be a house, it could be, and sometimes these things don't quite fall into place. And
Mm.
so, although they've gone to the other side, they're still quite aware that what they actually left behind for their loved ones, and if they haven't received them, can really make them quite sad that this actually happens. And this
Mm.
actually reminds me that it happened to me.
Oh.
My grandmother, whose name is Caterina, I was named after her. She died. I never actually met her physically, but she died in childbirth, the poor thing,
Mm.
giving birth to my auntie. So my dad was her firstborn, and then the second, she just died in childbirth. Back then, there was obviously, not much they could do for her.
Mm.
So I never physically met her, but throughout my years as I grew up, she would always come to me in spirit. And she would always have this beautiful wedding dress on, this beautiful wedding dress that she's married in, which I actually have a picture of her. And she had on this antique chain.
Mhm.
And Now, obviously, I don't believe that she ever left a will or anything in writing saying that she wanted this for me. But this chain went through the family, it went through her daughter and her daughter's daughters, and it was all the way in Italy. And wherever this chain landed, it seemed to create chaos and problems.
Mm.
So then finally, my dad, one of his trips to Italy, this chain, his sister just gave it to him. She said, look, I don't know what it is. I don't want this chain. It's just everywhere it goes, it seems to create havoc.
Mm.
So my dad takes the chain, comes back from Italy, and holds on to this chain for, I don't really know for how long. And then one day I get a knock on the door from my dad, and he had this chain. He'd actually thrown it in a plastic bag, like a freezer bag, and knotted it up.
Mm.
And he knocks on the door. I let him in, and he just picks up this chain, and he literally threw it on the table like it was on fire. And he's like, you know what? You have this chain. I opened it up, and I saw my grandmother in spirit. Obviously, I didn't say anything to my dad. He's always been a little bit uncomfortable with my gift. And I could feel that she said to me, I've always wanted this to be yours. So I do have this beautiful antique chain that she wore on her wedding dress. And I feel so blessed, and I feel her love, and I just feel how much she obviously, I know how much trouble she went to get it all the way from Italy here to Sydney, Australia, and into my hands.
Yeah, that's a lot of effort. That's a
There was a lot of effort, God love her, and I've had obviously no issues. So I sometimes I do have a lot of readings where people come, and there's always big arguments over inheritance, and people, families start bickering and fighting because one's been left more than the other, and it's quite unfortunately.
Mm.
And it doesn't help the loved ones on the other side when their family are bickering and fighting over what's been left inheritance wise. It really doesn't help them to kind of, rest in peace, so to say. So
Mm.
I honestly would advise people that, respect whatever it is that loved ones have left behind. Don't bicker and fight over it, because it does really disturb and create a lot of disharmony, not only in the family for the physical people,
Mm.
but also for those loved ones that have crossed over. They're trying to ascend, they're trying to, heal and continue their journey on the other side. And when they've got family here in the physical world fighting and bickering, of course, this sort of drags their energy down, and it doesn't allow them to have that, that lovely journey that they obviously need to take. So that's why I really say, fighting over inheritance, fighting over these things is just not good. And it's a big responsibility if you've been handed something like the story of my client with the pearls. The grandmother should have given them to her. I mean, my client was probably in her mid-20s, so she'd had plenty of time to hand them to her. And obviously, the great-grandmother came through, and she was quite upset because she really wanted these pearls for her.
Mm.
And eventually, obviously, she came for the reading, and she finally managed to get that news to her great-granddaughter.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So I've just thought of a question which might sound a little strange, but bear with me, stick with me on this one.
Yeah.
So, obviously when we talk about the spiritual realms and the spiritual world, we talk about how the most important thing is love and the energy of love, and that, here on earth, the physical manifestation of things, of objects, are essentially meaningless, or they're just sort of,
Mm.
they're just, it's just stuff. And the real goal, the real meaningful thing is, as I said, love and the energy of love. So I'm just trying to reconcile that train of thought with someone in spirit going, well, this physical object, this pearl necklace that I have, this is actually really important for someone to have. Does that make sense? I'm trying to.
Yes, because it's infused with her essence. So with this great grandmother, it was infused with her essence. It was infused with her love. It
Right.
was a part of it. It was obviously, I felt, something that she wore, something that she really treasured.
Hmm.
And therefore, she really wanted this to go to her great granddaughter because
Hmm.
her great granddaughter was going through her own stuff that, obviously for reasons of privacy, I'm not going to get into.
Mhm.
But she actually needed the essence of her great grandmother, the energy and the love of her great grandmother that was within those pearls because she's the one who wore them.
Hmm.
And that was like a bit of something for her to wear that would help her to heal and help her to get through what she needed to get through. So everything we wear is infused with our essence, our love. So if we have a particular ring we always wear, or whatever it is, it's infused with our love. So even though we've died and we've left it behind, it's not necessarily meaningless, and it's not being materialistic,
Yeah.
wanting it to be left to a certain person,
Yeah.
because that person perhaps needs that particular energy in their lives. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think that it's not, yeah, I think when people die and they leave behind things that they've really loved and cherished,
Hmm.
it just makes them happy to know that they're going to somebody that's going to appreciate them or enjoy them, because
Yeah.
they have no need for them anymore. Obviously, they're not taking them with them.
Yeah.
Um, but in the cases of really where there's been huge arguments over, especially properties, where they're in court and
Hmm.
one saying, "Oh, I deserve more, and I looked after mum more, and I should have got more of that." That does pull that spirit down. It makes them very sad to see their families bickering and fighting. Yes, they're no longer attached to their home because they have their own home in the spirit realms.
Hmm.
But it's we're always connected to our loved ones, whether they're here physically or whether they're on the other side. That frequency of love connects us to them.
Hmm.
So even though they're on the other side, if they're feeling their family bickering and fighting over each other, over, for example, a house or something like that, it will cause them, they will feel that discord and disharmony. They will feel that grief
Hmm.
and pain that's going on in the family
Hmm.
because we're all interconnected. It's like, I'm sure we've all had a moment where maybe a good friend or a loved one is going through a bad time, and you pick up the phone and go, "I don't know why, I just was thinking of you, and I felt like I should have called, I need to call you." And the friends like on the line go, "Oh my God, yes, how did you know? Well, it's the same signal that we send out to loved ones on the other side.
Hmm.
Like we've talked about in other episodes, you can connect with your loved ones through your heart. You can connect with them. You can communicate with them, and they can feel and sense you, especially when you're using the language of love. And the language of love is when you're speaking through your heart, from your heart, when you're feeling that loving words coming through you. Of course, they can hear you.
Hmm.
But when you're in a battle with your brothers or sisters or whatever's going on in war, in courts over an inheritance, then they will feel that also, because we're not disconnected from them because they are no longer in the physical world. We're
Hmm.
still very much connected to our loved ones because we build cords and connections, and energy connections to our loved ones. And these can never really be broken. We're always part of them as they are part of us.
Yeah.
we carry the DNA of our parents, we carry the DNA of our ancestors. In fact, we are connected to, you know, the lineage of our ancestors and beyond that. When you think about it, it's in our DNA, and that DNA contains memory. So if you've part of ancestors that went through a lot of warring and suffering and pain, that part of that unfortunately is in your DNA, and you might need to work through it to release it from yourself and heal it. But you're still connected. You're still a part of that soul group, if you like. We're always part of the soul group.
Yeah.
So that's why these things really matter. It's like, I think, we think about if one of us, if we were to die, we'd have things that we probably want to go to our children or friends or family members. And I think if that was not respected, we would definitely feel it on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So if physical objects can retain our energy, or and I guess kind of like bridge a gap between the living and the dead in a way, because there's energy attached to those objects. I know that there's, just in terms of jewelry, because we've talked about necklaces and whatnot. So, because I know that there is a way to, I guess, for want of a better way to describe it, you can psychically tune into people by holding their jewelry.
Psychometry.
Psychometry, right? I knew that. You're right. I'd forgotten the word for it. So you can actually do that, Caterina, because, like, I guess if you're wearing jewelry, and because jewelry stays on your body, pretty much all the time, so that's going to retain a lot of your energy, which makes, I guess, in a weird way, you can read the jewelry to get information on people. Like that's a thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Psychometry. Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes when people come for a reading, I might sort of say, "Oh, can I hold like your ring or a bracelet or something?" Just helps me to kind of tap in more deeply into their energy, to give them the guidance they need.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's why sometimes people have come to me where they've bought something in an antique store, like a ring or a piece of jewelry, and it's like, "Oh, I love the piece, but I've not felt good wearing it," because it's probably an energy that's not in sync and harmony with their energy. So these things can be cleared. You can clear them. Sometimes, look, I energetically will clear them for clients when they come to me with things like that. But you could wash them in some salt water. You could leave them in the sun. You could even like bury them in the dirt for a while. Like, obviously don't bury it too far so that you can find it again. There is ways of clearing energy if it's really, you've bought it and from say a second-hand or antique shop, and you don't necessarily want that energy because it's an unknown to you. But again, having said that, I've had people who've bought things and just love the energy or feel of whatever it is they've bought in some antique store and kept the energy. So we are energetic beings, and everything is energy, and we definitely connect energetically to each other. That's why we feel really good around somebody and not feel so good around others, because they have an energy frequency that either is in sync with ours or is not. Sometimes you just meet someone and you go, "Oh gosh, I just don't like that. I just can't connect with them."
Yep.
Doesn't mean you're being mean and nasty. It's just that their energy and your energy is not in sync. It's not in harmony.
Yep. Not vibing.
Not vibing, that's right. So it's exactly the same if you are buying something in an antique store.
Yeah, right. Well, in terms of psychometry, I actually gave it a try once, and it did work.
It's lots of fun. Yeah, I think it's a great way to develop your psychic abilities.
Yeah.
I encourage people who want to really develop their psychic abilities to do it with your friends. Hold each other's jewelry and sit and just shut your eyes and kind of allow your mind to go blank and just feel whatever messages or images are coming up. And it's a really wonderful way of being able to train your third eye to to be able to read information from a particular object, or reading the energy from an object.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, I know what I did is I borrowed a friend's wedding ring, and I was like, I'm just going to give this a go, and I just kind of held it in my hand, and like as you said, I just kind of tried to keep my mind blank, and the name Frank just popped into my head, and I wasn't going to say anything because you kind of feel like, well, that's stupid. I'm not going to say that, but after a little while, I kind of went, oh, I'm getting the name Frank. Like, does that mean anything? And she just kind of went, oh my god, and I was like, what? And she said, the guy who made the ring, his name was Frank.
Oh, wow. See?
So,
And you should never hold back a message. Don't see, this is where people lose themselves when trying to do psychometry, because they begin to judge it, or
mm,
you've got to really just trust the information and go with it.
it's
Like
true.
you did, you were holding on to that name until you really felt like, I've just got to really say this. Don't
Yeah.
overthink it. Just go with the flow. The more you step out of the way and go with the flow, the clearer your messages will be.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's like there's a critical part of your brain that just doesn't work with
Yeah,
psychic.
it's the logical part that's saying, oh, this is crazy, or what are you saying, or this can't be real, because we haven't been trained to use our psychic abilities. We haven't been trained to respect our psychic abilities. And yet we are intuitive, psychic, spiritual beings, but we've just, you know, not been trained, or not been um, made to feel that it's natural and normal. We've just been made to feel that everything has to be what you see, sense, feel, hear. Just physical reality is real, but there is reality beyond physical reality for sure. And we have the ability to tap into those realities.
Yeah.
We just have to begin to not feel limited
Mm.
just by our physical senses, and go beyond that. It's like when you dream, you go into your dream state at night, and you find yourself having all kinds of sometimes weird and wonderful dreams. And it's because at night your spirit has an opportunity to leave the 3D vessel and go out exploring. And that's why sometimes people say, I have these weird dreams, or wonderful dreams. I'm in these strange places, or I'm on another planet, or I'm in another reality. Yeah, because that's your spirit soaring free. It's finally away from the 3D body and all the fear and everything that's attached to it, and it's out free and it's exploring. And that's what happens when you pass away. You're leaving the limited 3D reality, and you're able to explore and go beyond the 3D, and explore other dimensions, explore other realities, and meet other soul groups. It's you can it's infinite,
Yeah.
infinite experiences that you can have when you're out of the 3D physical realm.
Amazing. And talking about how, we've talked about some positive experiences, but can people sometimes pick up objects? And you mentioned, antiques and secondhand things. Can people
Mm.
have antiques and secondhand things in their house and they can attract bad energy? Like, you said that sometimes the objects go to people who aren't supposed to have them. Um,
Yeah, like my grandmother's necklace.
yeah.
Yeah, and
So
it
they could,
just was,
yeah.
I don't know, it wasn't, because the energy of it was just not in sync with wherever it went. So it wasn't that she was creating bad energy. Again, the energy of my grandmother's necklace was not in sync with whomever it went to. So they felt uncomfortable having the necklace around, until it kept going round and round and round. And then finally, my dad showed up, and it's like, let's offload it to him. And
Yeah.
then he took it home, and he didn't like the feel of it. So he knocked on my door one day and threw it on the table at me. So yes, so the same thing. You can buy something in an antique shop, and I'm always be cautious, be aware of what you're buying, and try and clear it. Do some sort of a little clearing ceremony. Perhaps use a crystal, like you can, maybe use one of your crystals and just program it to clear the object, and just using your hands and obviously the crystal, run it over the particular object, leave it out in the sunlight if it's possible. If you can wash it, that's amazing also. Rinse it in some salt water, things like that will help to just cleanse, that the energy from a particular object. And sometimes, there are objects where people have bought that, many years ago, there was a girl, I had to go and do a house cleaning for her, and she'd bought a picture of a soldier in an antique store. It was a photograph of a soldier, and he'd passed under such tragic circumstances. He was killed at war. And so that tragedy, that energy was in her home. And ever since she brought this photo into her home, they'd all been feeling really depressed, and they were fighting, and all this was going on. And so when I walked into the house, I'm just looking around, and my eyes went to the picture. I went, oh my gosh, this energy around this photo of this soldier was just really sad. He was a young man, and I felt like he'd left behind a family and kids and so much grief and sorrow. And he took all that grief and sorrow with him to the other side. So that was still all projected in the photo.
Isn't that incredible? How that
Yeah.
how that kind of energy can just carry on like that. That's really quite mind-boggling.
Yeah, there are. Look, I love antique shops. I just find them fascinating. But I've got into antique shops where I've picked up things and I thought, oh, this just doesn't. Oh, excuse me, I had to sneeze. This just really doesn't feel like a happy energy, or
Yeah.
you can sort of feel that something really bad's gone down with these people who have owned this. So you've got to really be careful what you bring into your home, because it will impact how you're feeling.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, I've definitely been at antique stores, and you can just the energy in a lot of them is very heavy, and it just
Oh, yeah.
feel. And I went to one recently, which is like in a big warehouse, and like some of the areas in it felt fine, and there was some corners and some other bits where you're just like, I don't want to go down there. I don't want to go near whatever's in that area. I don't want to go near. You could just feel
Yeah.
the real. It was a real jumble of energy. Some of it was like,
Well, there is a jumble of energy. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
There's some happy energy, there's some sad energy. Sometimes in these antique stores that people have gone completely bankrupt, and they've had things taken from them. So, you've got all that energy. It's like I do a lot of business clearings for people, and they might move into a space and they've got this great business, but then move into a particular space, and then all of a sudden their business starts to bomb out for no reason. And it's because they've put themselves in a space where the last people went bankrupt, and these terrible things, and so it begins to impact their business and the energy of their business.
Right.
Look, it's really incredible how impacted we can become by other energies. I guess it's the same thing. You move into a house, you're perfectly happy until you move into a particular house, and then the energy in there starts driving you crazy. You feel depressed. You start fighting with each other, and you don't know why.
Yeah. So it's I guess the advice would be for people is to actually, if you are moving into a house or you're at an antique store and you want to buy something at secondhand, would the advice be, Caterina, to just take a moment to actually just quiet your mind and tune in and go, what is the feeling? Like how not what does it look like? What does it feel like?
Yeah, how does it feel? Is it in sync with myself? Is there something I could take home and potentially cleanse or clear? Or, it's really, really important, because, like I said, that energy can then begin to influence your energy.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
or your reality, because you're bringing something from an external into your reality. It's going to impact your reality.
Yeah. Well, I've definitely been a lot more careful with secondhand things since knowing about this. Like I try and I try and keep it that kind of stuff to a minimum, or just not do it at all. For
Mm. Yeah, look, I think, it's not about like, it is a lot of fun. And I do think you do find some treasures. I've found some treasures in antique shops, but obviously I'm able to clear them, no issue at all. But,
Mm.
I think you have a little ceremony, a little ritual to clear it and kind of claim it your own. Then you can impregnate it with your own energy, your own frequency, and
Mm.
at least then you'll enjoy whatever it is you've bought. It's
Yeah.
easy if you're buying clothes because you give them a good wash, you rinse them in
Mm.
some salt water, you hang them out in the sun. But jewelry, photos of furniture, that they're a little bit more difficult, like to really clear.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, the thing that I buy the most of these days is of vinyl records, and they're pretty safe. Like you don't come across many haunted albums.
Vinyl record. You never know. You may know one day.
You never, exactly. I better watch out. Better watch out. Might buy the best of ABBA and find out that it's haunted.
So how big's your collection of vinyl records? It's
Uh,
huge.
it's growing. Like I reckon, there's probably I don't know, like a few hundred there now. Like maybe.
Wow. But see, they would have energy there of whomever has owned them. Have you ever thought to maybe white light them or clear them with some crystals? Because whoever's owned them has handled them with their hands, has
Oh yeah.
played them. Particular records, particular songs can bring out feelings of joy in people or feelings of unhappiness in people. Maybe they played a particular song whilst they were breaking up. And so that energy is on the vinyl records. There's
Interesting.
no exceptions. You hadn't thought of that, had you?
No, I had not, Caterina. I had not, but I'm going to think of it now every time I play a secondhand record.
No, but you've got your little records. What you should do is just do a little prayer over them, do a little blessing,
Yep.
and just command that you're clearing the energy of that is not in sync with you, any energy that's negative or sad. That anyone can do this with any, you can command it to be cleared, cleansed, abolished, anything that is not of the love, that is not of light from your particular object.
Okay. All right.
Objects.
Well, I will take that advice to
And then
heart.
do a little visualization, and again, you can envision, a beautiful waterfall of crystalline light coming down over your objects and washing them down, cleansing them, clearing them.
I love it. I love
That's
it.
all you need to really do.
That's it.
But I reckon your vinyl records would have energy on them also.
Oh, absolutely. Well, looking at the state of some of them, they've been handled and loved quite sufficiently. So I'm sure there is energy imbued into into them.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, good. I will be looking at them in a different light now.
Hmm.
Um, well, look, you know what, Kat? I think we're probably at the end of our run for this week's episode.
Yes.
This has been very, very interesting, and we solved the case of the missing pearls, which was very
That
cool.
was really fun. Yeah, I loved it when she sent me the photo of them and she literally went there the next day. I love that. I thought she's a determined little soul. It was wonderful. Yes. And again, guys, join our Patreon if you would like to develop your spiritual gifts. We've been going for how many weeks now? A couple of months, James, the
Yeah,
Patreon.
a couple of months. Yeah, yeah, a
Mm.
couple of months.
And everyone's loving it and learning so much and making changes in their lives. And yeah, so that's another great tool that's readily available to you guys if you want to learn some really um, develop your own gifts and be able to take control of your energetic and spiritual life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really fun to kind of see people's abilities gradually develop as well, because
Mm,
I've always said that, whenever I've done things like meditations or lessons or, psychic development things, it's always more powerful in a group setting because, it's the combined energies just seems to amplify it. And,
Mm.
I don't know what the science is behind that, but I know it's
So
true.
there's a lot more energy, and we're all focusing. So we're all focusing on the angels, then there's a whole group of us, so that we're sending out that sound, that energy. Um, is much louder, it's much stronger. That connection is much stronger than when you're doing it on your own.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
always lovely to meditate with a group because it is much more powerful energy. There's so much more energy,
Yep.
and that resonates out um, to the heavens, and you can draw it in, and it just feels beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I
Absolutely.
wish we were, as a humanity, coming together and doing more meditation together and
Yeah, we could.
envisioning, the world in a much better and happier space.
Absolutely. Well, let's hope that people get on board.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. So, okay. So, thank you, James, for our wonderful chat tonight.
No, it's been great. I've really enjoyed hearing some of those stories. I haven't heard a lot of those, so
Mm,
it's always a great joy to hear the wild and wacky
yes.
worlds of Caterina
Oh my
Lagarto.
gosh, yeah. And yeah, I hope it's helped some of our audience with perhaps whatever's going on with them,
Hmm.
to better understand how, energy can impact you. It can impact your loved ones on the other side also.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay, so lots of love, everybody, and have a wonderful week, and have a great week, James.
You too, Caterina. Thanks for listening,
See you
everyone.
next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
To gain access to private spiritual development classes, guided meditations, and live Q&As with Caterina, please visit www.patreon, that's patreon.com/The Australian Ghost Whisperer.